part of this conflict that Jesus has with in the spiritual realm is leading toward obviously a climax, and we see that in the book of Revelation, and there's little pieces or hints throughout the New Testament dropped about kind of where all this leads, and it leads to Jesus being seated at the right hand of the Father, but it also leads to us in a future that we're involved in, and that future seems to be, from what Scripture tells us, that we are seated with Christ at the right hand of the Father, and what does that exactly mean? Because I think one of the things that's interesting is this life. If you look at Scripture, it seems to be a preparation for a greater life to come. And that greater life to come obviously involves the spiritual realm. And if that's the case, what kind of preparation is this life going towards? And if we don't believe in the spiritual realm, what part of that preparation are we missing out on?
Yeah, it's in terms of preparation for the next life and stuff like that. Obviously, the Christian at the heart of this would be sanctification, and it's getting to the point where all your wills, emotions, desires line up with exactly God's purposes in reality, and the more that is the case and stuff like that. Obviously, in heaven, there's still some cryptic things about what heaven's actually going to look like and stuff like that. But you still get an idea that there's a spiritual world there, and there's still going to be a kingdom, and there's still going to be places where we fit into this kingdom, maybe, and the better you've prepared, so to speak, then the better place you're going to serve in the next reality as well. But oftentimes, we spend our whole life preparing for things that happen merely in this life, and we get ready for, we go to college and we get ready for a career, and then we have a career and we get ready for retirement, and then we get ready for I don't know what. And but it seems like we're always preparing for something further down the road in this life, and rightfully so. But oftentimes we just don't spend near as much effort and concentration preparing for all of eternity.
Yeah, I think that the first question that we might get from a lot of Christians when we're talking about this is, well, what's the point? You can't see angels, you can't see demons. When it comes down to it, my life is about making choices in the physical world every day, and yet Scripture tells us that we're going to be judging angels, and if this is preparation for that, and we're completely blind to the spiritual world, and yet at some point we're going to be in charge of judging the spiritual world, it seems like we're going to be lacking some preparation. What does that preparation look like exactly? How do we become Christians that are going to be fit to judge the spiritual world?
That's a great question. Romans 12 talks about being transformed by the renewing of your mind. And so obviously how we engage our minds is going to be of vital importance. And sometimes it's weekly reorienting your life, with worship. But even more so, I think for me, it's daily reorienting my life. And sometimes it's just the constant reminder of the spiritual reality that really is, supersedes the physical reality we currently happen to inhabit.
Yeah, I feel like that as Christians, if we don't start to understand or see the spiritual reality that influences our physical world, that it's going to leave us in a poor place to be judging that realm. So as Christians, if we're looking at this conflict that exists in Scripture in the spiritual realm, and we're trying to take this message to a world that seems blind to the spiritual realm, or maybe even hostile to the spiritual realm, how do we do that?
That's a difficult one. I like your kind of segue of talking about even getting, say somebody to admit that there is a spiritual reality beyond the physical, and talking about the ideas of freedom or justice or love, or, and maybe starting there. But man, I can see that being an uphill battle in quite a few conversations.
There's a kind of resurgence of Wicca and witchcraft across the United States, and even in places like New York City, amongst wealthy, a lot of times wives and female professionals. Is that strange to think about that in the modern world, and what does that tell us about the desire for kind of spiritual purpose and meaning?
It is kind of strange, I will say. And again, you know, in a purely atheistic realm of science, like anything supernatural is kind of just shrugged off to a great degree. And so in that world, I think, but again, you know, it's a world that I've spent a fair amount of time inhabiting, but I also realize that it's a world that 94% of people don't. But maybe it shouldn't be so strange, because in our world, we've kind of tried to take God off his throne, so to speak, in our minds. And as Nietzsche would have said, we've killed God, and the nihilism that's replaced it has left us just craving purpose and meaning. So I guess maybe it shouldn't be surprising that we're looking for it in maybe what seems initially strange places.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about, you know, this big coven in New York, it's full of, you know, really well-educated people, and so maybe the message of there being a spiritual realm and is not going to be as hard to communicate as we as Christians maybe assume.